Good morning, PT Breakfast Club, Tony Maritato, and the great Jimmy McKay. Jimmy, I'm so glad you got back on today.
And we're back. That's what you have to do when you come. And we're back. I don't know why they always would hold their ear. I'm not really sure. Good to be back, bright and early. I think I picked a great day where I am. It's super bright, super sunny, super warm. So,
What is the temperature there? Like here in Ohio, it's perfect. It's like 72 degrees, sunny, just gorgeous day.
yeah, it's pretty nice here in upstate New York. We haven't had. I was just actually commenting on with a couple friends, like, oh, it's been a great, spring, early summer. I'm like, yeah, we haven't had any crazy hot days. 62 degrees right now, and then like, yeah, 90s coming next week. So buckle up.
Yeah,
Make sure you got the air
same
conditioner.
for us.
Yeah.
So what's
So
on
it's
the
on the-
agenda? What's going on?
So this was something that I wanted to bring to attention. It's really, really cool when you see PT pop up and not being spoken about, or the conversation not started by physical therapists. We talk about ourselves and what we do all the time, right? We talk about it with each other. We talk about it with patients. We talk about it with people who don't even know what we do. But there was a recent report about a week ago that came out from this organization called Peterson Health. I'll bring it on the screen for those of you watching the live stream, and we'll put the link in the show notes. This is an independent organization, so it's called Peterson Health Technology. And I don't really know a ton of the background on this organization, but if you scroll to the bottom of their website, they've got not only Peterson Health Technology, but like Peterson Philanthropy, stuff like that. So they're an organization that sort of does these third-party reports. They pick a topic, and then they say, all right, let's get to sort of the bottom of this. So the thing I wanted to highlight was this report that came out. Let me switch screens here. So this report came out. It was great to see APTA jumped on it, probably because the results were pretty good for PT, but it's around what you and Dave and myself have been talking about for the last couple of weeks. And that's around virtual MSK solutions. So I think the two hot topics on the last couple of months have been artificial intelligence. We've been talking about that. We'll continue to talk about that. Our grandkids will be talking about that. And this other virtual MSK solution. And, remember back to 2020 when virtual care was not possible. And then all of a sudden it was absolutely necessary. And, necessity is the mother of invention. So this independent report, I'll share the breakdown. They do some cost analysis too, which we can get into the weeds. But I thought this chart that they put up summed it up. So here's what they did. They called it Peterson Health Technology and Institute category level rankings for virtual MSK solutions. And I do want to preface this, right? So while this report is about physical therapy, our friends who do neurologic or vestibular care, this is focused on MSK care, right? Because I got some people who work with, patients post-stroke or post-traumatic brain injury. That's not what this report was looking at. This was looking at what they called traditional low back pain. They mentioned several times in the report, right? So they broke it down to three categories: app-based exercise therapy, and they give some examples. Kaya Health being one of them. I hadn't heard of the other one that they had, Dario. Had you heard of Dario?
I have not.
Okay. Physical therapist guided solutions. So the first category is app-based sort of PT, hands-off. The second being physical therapist guided solutions. Good to be back. And then the third would be RTM, remote therapeutic monitoring, augmented PT solutions. Now it broke those three categories: app-based, PT guided, PT augmented. And then it ranked it in clinical effectiveness. Does it do what it actually claims to do, right? Does it actually get the job done? And then it looks at the number. So it's matching, or it's pairing value plus cost, and that's a value proposition. And then it sort of gives it a breakdown and a summary. And it ranked it in a couple different ways: positive, negative, and moderate. So positive, negative, and neutral. And then higher clinical evidence certainty and lower clinical evidence certainty. So like, how positive, how neutral, how negative was it? And then how sure are they about that? So it was in my view, just from this cursory look, it was looking at it and saying, okay, how well are these things? And then how well can we actually rank them? And before you looked at this, what would you have thought would have been the best and the highest ranked level? Would it have been app-based, physical therapist guided, or RTM or physical therapist augmented solutions?
I mean, I would have said physical therapist guided just because you have that human accountability aspect. There's a relationship there. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. I would have said, and of course, as physical therapists, we want to see that pop up, right? Because we're all nervous, myself included, that hey, maybe we're going to get replaced, and that's why I mentioned AI at like the top of the intro for this. But that's what it was. So let's go through it. So yeah, so physical therapist guided solutions, and they used examples, and I'm sure you've heard we've talked about a couple of these platforms: Hinge,
Yeah.
Omeda, Recovery One, Sword, Vori. I'd heard of Hinge, Sword, and Recovery One. I hadn't heard of Omeda or Vori. Have you?
No, same
No?
with you. Hinge and Sword were the two that jumped out at me.
Right. And the results for physical therapist guided solutions were of this: clinical effectiveness. It gave it a positive ranking, a positive ranking or grade. It also said lower clinical evidence certainty. So what it's saying is like the results we got were positive, but we need more evidence to actually back this up before we give this an A+. So that was good. They were able to, with higher clinical evidence, go into the economic impact. So in terms of results for physical therapist guided solutions, they said these platforms overall improve both pain and function comparable to in-person PT. And that makes people real nervous, right? Because like, wow, it's comparable to in-person PT, except it was still delivered by a PT.
Right.
We're just talking about a where and a how, right? Going down the line, well, now what's the money? Where's the money go? Is this going to continue? Will things get funded? Will insurance companies reimburse for this? The economic impact, they had a higher clinical evidence certainty, and their impact was positive, and it said it decreases net spending relative to in-person PT with savings from avoided care. Essentially, what they're saying, or how I read this, is overall spending is lower when compared to traditional how we're receiving care right now, and they're accrediting this to what they're avoiding down the line, which is also harder to prove. It's harder to see. It's harder to sell, right? This is like when Allstate does the ad campaign with Mayhem. Like it's harder to sell. Like you need to actually like make it tangible. So what they're saying is it is a decreased net spending, so a net savings relative to in-person PT with savings from avoided care. And then their overall rating for guided solutions is evidence supports broader adoption. Positive ranking in terms of physical therapist guided solutions. Now, I would say the next best or the next highest ranking for them was app-based, and that's like Kaya Health or Dario. I'd heard of Kaya Health. I got a friend who works there, but I hadn't heard of Dario. Their clinical effectiveness, they said it improves pain, but not function, not suitable. Not substitutable. Is that even a word? I mean, it's on the report. Don't replace it for in-person PT. Evidence certainty lower. So it was giving it a moderate ranking in terms of effective. Like, yeah, it proves some pain, but not necessarily function. Don't swap it out for your in-person PT. They do need more evidence, they said. Economic impact, pricing data wasn't available. And overall, their summary rating was evidence supports broader adoption depending on price. So they were saying, like, listen, if we're going to give this a juice versus squeeze rating, we need more information on economic impact. We can't do it. And then RTM, or remote therapeutic monitoring, augmented PT solutions. They were saying clinical effectiveness, same grade as PT guided in terms of needs more information or lower clinical evidence, but a positive ranking, saying it may perform better than in-person PT alone. Now, the economic impact was it increased net spending, and the savings from avoided care are less than when you add in that RTM billing. So looking into that. Overall, it gave it a neutral rating. Ongoing evidence generation may be needed, may justify broader adoption for patients with higher acuity MSK conditions. So it broke this thing down, but now we're seeing an independent monitoring agency, this isn't us talking about us, saying, okay, if we're talking about virtual, this is a big ambiguous term. Virtual means a lot of things. It can mean a lot of different things. What are they? They're starting to break those things down into those 3 categories. And they're starting to at least say, what are the results? We've been doing this for a while now, or these platforms have been around for a while now. We're seeing adoption. What does this thing look like? What does it shake down for our profession?
I love it. I think it's awesome. Anything that brings attention to what we do is amazing. My first thought, my brain always goes to, okay, how can we leverage this today? Not when the research is done, not 17 years from now. How can I make an impact, make this work today? And one of the things that I'm looking at is, and I've talked about this before. So I think, Hinge and Sword, they used to claim like no physical therapist, they were available if needed. But then they got some backlash, and now there are physical therapists that are involved in it.
Right.
My family members, brothers-in-law, sisters-in-law, they send me articles and stuff that their employer sends them, always offering Hinge and Sword. Every single one of them. They work for large companies. Some are engineers and different things. They always have like mail, and in the newsletter, it talks about, free access to musculoskeletal care through Sword or Hinge. But the apps, so the app only isn't as effective as the PT guided. So why don't we get involved with the app only solution, since we're not going to be in with Hinge or Sword, and
Right.
we just find an app that we like. We know users are on the apps already. Let's start marketing to those apps specifically. And I then become the provider of choice for whatever that app is. And I don't remember any of the names, but I think there's a real opportunity there. Somewhere in the world, there's a user, they buy the app, they don't use the app isn't as effective. Kaya was one that I researched a while ago. Why wouldn't I generate SEO optimized content, create video content, showing how I can be your therapist if you're already using Kaya? Because Kaya alone is not as effective as using Kaya with me as your therapist. Just like I said, Peloton is out there, thousands of Peloton users. I can be the Peloton physical therapist. I don't have to be employed by Peloton. I don't have to be contracted by Peloton. I just create content talking about how I can help a Peloton user position their bike and use their bike more effectively, overcome knee pain when you're on your Peloton, that kind of stuff.
So you'd be like a remora fish swimming around, it'd be a symbiotic relationship. Like, listen, we don't have a formal agreement, but you're doing this thing, go do you. I'm going to be over here and I could help you. I mean, it would, I could see like an organization, like the Peloton example is good, right? It's easy to see. Peloton is like, great, keep our riders riding longer because we want that $40 a month. We want more people to buy $2,000 bikes and $4,000 treadmills, which is a wacky. Do never buy a $4,000. Buy it used. Like, that's my recommendation. Yeah. So you're saying, listen, the guided solutions at Hinge and Sword, you're not going to get in, but where's the opportunity? The opportunity is on the top row. If you're watching a live stream, that's app based because it's not substitutable for in-person PT. Great. So apply that, make it supplementary, add you plus a Kaya or a Dario.
And it's technology that I'm never going to build. I'm never going to create, right? Like, I'm not going to create Facebook, but I build a business on the Facebook platform. And you just look at the different levels. Like, Facebook can't exist without the internet, but Facebook didn't build the internet. They built a business on the internet. I can't build Facebook. I build a business on Facebook. These are the same kind of opportunities that we see. So I think this is where kind of stage 2 of private practice ownership is going. And this can be a one-person business. You don't need staff. You don't need admin. This could all be virtual, or it could be in person. I could be the local Cincinnati provider of in-person services. I meet with these individuals once a month. Yeah, there's just so many ways that we can make this work today in our businesses.
What if you added like a Movement X, like who already sort of have an infrastructure? Are you familiar with Movement X?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Like, if you took a Movement X and you were like, hey, add this, like, okay, instead of us being in competition, we're not. I'm not an app and you're not, you don't have physical therapists on staff. How do we come together? It doesn't need to be formal necessarily to start anyway. How do we yes and?
Right. And yes, and have you seen, I've got it queued up here, I'm gonna pull it up, the APTA Digital Health Transparency Campaign. Have you seen this? Are you aware of this? Tell the
Um,
community about it.
is this go into it? But I'm pretty sure I did. Is this with how they're sort of like giving the nod to apps? Like essentially, if you're an app and you want to be, I don't know, like kind of given a badge by the APTA, you go through their process and then you get put on their list and given their blessing.
Basically, they wanna keep the PT in virtual PT.
Right.
You know, so all of these companies have made the commitment to say, we're going to keep the physical therapist involved. We're not going to remove the physical therapist with AI physical therapy. And there's a ton of, well-known companies on this list. I think it's a
Hinge was
great,
on there.
huh?
Hinge and Sword are on there. I
Yeah.
just saw pop by.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hinge, Sword. I only found out about this when I was working with HippoScribe and we wanted to get on the list.
Right.
But the City PT, I don't know. This would be a great connection for you and anybody watching. The founder of City PT is just amazing, and he's got a really, really great story. But I think we see this. Finally, the community is embracing. Okay, this is technology. This is where we're going. We don't need to worry about losing our jobs. There's always going to be a place for the human, at least in the foreseeable future. So let's use this technology to make what we do even better.
This is, I mean, this goes back to 1997, 1998. And some of the people listening, right? Some of the younger PTs are going to go like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. But there was an app called Napster. And Napster, all it was a file sharing service. They were just the first, there were not apps to share large files. And in terms of files, they focused on music. They focused on MP3s. And they were the first ones to say, you come here, you get these songs for, it's insane to sit here right now in 2024, and when this was not that long ago, to think like the barrier to get music delivered to you was the radio, where you just sat there passively, or you could actively go spend lots and lots of money on a disc. But even then it was not really portable to bring your whole CD collection. And they didn't build the internet, but they were able to build a business on the internet. Although famously, Justin Timberlake's character in The Social Network was like, it's not much of a business in free music. But the situation I want to talk about was really like one band who should have been the face of anarchy and sticking it to the machine. Karen has no idea about Napster. They were just a file sharing service. So you went on this app, opened it, searched a file, you said Foo Fighters Everlong, and now you could download it from someone else's computer and it would be on yours. Everybody's like, well, that's what Spotify is. I'm like, right. But before Spotify, there was no barrier. And now the solution's so obvious. But Metallica, who should have been the band, the face of anarchy and stick it to the man, was the band doing press conferences saying, you have to outlaw this. This is going to kill music. Starving artists. We're millionaires. We're not doing this.
Yeah.
We're doing it for the bands that are out there now who aren't going to make it. And I thought it was cool because he's also one of my favorite, band leaders, which was Dave Grohl. And he was like, number one, a solution will find. You can't legislate against technology. You could try, but it's like shoveling against the tide. It's going to find its level. It's like water. It's just going to find its level. So you can say, we're going to pledge to never let the PT out of this, all those things, but be the better solution. And Dave Grohl was saying, even if we give your music away, let anybody download it, it's what can you do as the Foo Fighters or the band that hasn't broken next that technology can't. He's like, give the music away for free. Listen to it on your phone all you want. Make your money on the live shows and the experience and the relationship you build with people who listen to your music. That's what's going to support you. I forget who said it, but the whole idea of 1,000 true fans. If you get 1,000 true fans to
Kevin Kelly
give you $1,000 a year. If you provided $5,000 in value and asked for $1,000, you're net positive and people will have the relationship. So he said that. But now, like, the solution is somewhere in the middle, because for Napster or Apple Music, I happily pay $10 a month and I have access to every song in the world. Now, I don't know how it is, and every couple of years the debate comes up, is it worth it for the artists? Are the artists getting enough? That sort of thing. And that they should get enough, right? We're sort of like democratizing the experience. But I think the solution will be somewhere in the middle. It will not be the apps that we just talked about in the way that they exist now. It will not be just PT either. It will not just be PT how it is now. It will not. I'm very sorry. Don't be Metallica. Don't try to be Metallica, right? The answer is going to be somewhere in the middle. Those who lean in my opinion, who lean in and say, let's try this. What do I bring to the table? Those are going to be, in my opinion, the people who come out on top and have the best time and deliver the best care.
I mean, it's likely that without Napster, we never would have had the access to music that we have today.
Yeah,
they forced the hand of all the gatekeepers to figure out how can we get music out cheaper, how can we get music more accessible. And I would argue that while yes, it probably brings down net profitability for the content producer, you still have somebody like what's the girl's name? Oh my gosh, every girl. Who?
Taylor Swift, you mean? When she
Taylor Swift, she's making hundreds of millions of dollars. You still have the success because of the exchange in value. Of course, they've built community. There's the whole Swifties movement. But what's interesting in this, and I'm curious to hear your thought on this, why is there not a Napster for research? So my understanding, and I think you've said it before, clinical research. If you reach out to the author is allowed to give you the clinical research for free. Is that correct, or am I wrong?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's always like, some stipulations, but typically from and this was like one of those aha moments where when someone told me like, this can't be true, and people are like, it's actually true. But if you reach out to an author who produced a piece of clinical work, they're allowed to give you some, and there might be a limitation on, they can send out 50 copies.
Sure.
I was actually just reading something about, I believe the publisher was Elsevier, and how they can embed and figure out, like if you somehow went to Sci-Hub, which is a website no one should go to because you'd get free research, right? You should never go there. It's bad. But if you get a PDF and then I send it to you and you send it to someone else, even though it's a PDF, there's metadata on there. They can track those things. Like, wow, they're so sophisticated because they're gatekeepers. And clinical research is a really great example of like, shouldn't this have been how are these people still making money? Like, the wild thing is like, we pay money for like national institute and NIH grants, like National Institutes of Health. We, the taxpayer, fund research, pay researchers because they're doing work. They should get paid for this, right? Then the research gets published in for-profit journals. And then we who funded it have to pay to read the research that we funded. So it's like, hey, my kid is playing in a middle school soccer game. I got to pay to watch him. I got to pay a ticket to watch my kid's the show, man. I'm the show. I produced that, right? So yeah, this is a good question. Like, how would you democratize, or how would you level the playing field on research? It's a multi-billion-dollar market, and you're right. I'm surprised. I think Sci-Hub is it's been called the Napster of research, and it was like invented by like some like, I'm going to say, I think she was a teenage Russian girl, I believe was the story that I heard. And she saw the same thing. This is stupid. And my friend Mike, who's done YouTube videos on, have you ever seen the YouTube video on why your scientific poster is horrible and how to fix it? No. I'll share that. We'll do an episode on that. But he's like, this stops progress. He's like, this could stop the progress of the cure for the disease that kills someone that and it could have been there 5 years earlier because of friction.
Right. I just can't understand. Like, we see how, I don't even know. So you said Spotify. I remember Rhapsody. I remember all these subscription services that came out, even Amazon Music. So yeah, I used to go to the store. You probably remember some of the big names. I don't remember, but I'd go to the mall. Let's go back 20 steps. I'd go to the mall. I'd go into the store. I
Yeah.
would look through cassettes. I was at a buddy's house this weekend. They were having a graduation party for their middle child. And on the wall was a radio built into the house. And there was a cassette in the cassette player.
Yeah.
So I grabbed my 15-year-old son who loves technology, super smart kid. I'm like, hey, Lucas, come over here. Check this out. I push the eject button. It's got that slow, like, psh. I pull it out and I'm like, hey, do you know what this is? And he asked me if it was a VHS tape. That's what he asked me.
Wow.
VHS tape. And he was like, no, that can't be right. That's video. But anyway, so we would go to those stores. Sam Goody. Yes, Bo.
I mean, I don't want
to Sam Goody.
I don't want to brag, but I used to work at the Wall.
We would buy them. Anyway, now fast forward, unlimited music, $10 subscription, no commercials, and it gets cheaper and cheaper. Yes, sir.
Well, hold on though. So the progression was if I wanted music, I could listen to it passively on the radio and just wait for whatever idiot radio DJ was going to play next, right? Or
I'd be sitting there waiting to hit the record button on the cassette tape.
Because you were trying to hijack that and make your own mixtape, which is essentially what we do now with playlists. But there was an intermediary step or two, and you're mentioning that, which was and my buddy who was a writer for a paper in Northeast Pennsylvania did the breakdown for every dollar spent on a CD, how much the artist got versus how much the record company got, and it was criminal. It was absolutely criminal what the artist got in terms of cents on the dollar. But remember, it was pay for it per CD, and you're paying, I don't know, $25 for 10 songs or whatever, 12 songs, 7 of which you were never going to listen to, right? Then singles came out. You could buy just one song, inflated price, but it felt like a better return on investment. But then when we went digital, Apple said songs are 99 cents.
Yeah.
So it was like, well, you could own 1 million songs for $1 million. That is still an insane insane value proposition. If I wanted 1 million, although you're never going to listen to 1 million songs. And now the deal is $10, you can sort of listen to whatever you want. But this is the Blockbuster versus Netflix argument, which is if you went into a Blockbuster and rented 1 million movies, you'd have to pay $10 million. But if you go to Netflix, you could have access to all of them. You're never going to watch all of them.
Right.
But now, and we should do this on Thursday. I just gave a presentation to an organization using this methodology, but it feels like I have this much value, infinite value, when I pay Apple $10 a month to get Apple Music. I'm going to listen to the same 40 or 50 or 100 songs anyway that I would have paid $100 for. But I can, at random, at 2:00 in the morning, get that one song without having to feel like they're dipping their hand in my pocket. That's just perceived value. All value is perceived value. Versus an exchange every time, or here's $10 a month, take my $120 a year. I feel like I'm coming out on top anyway. How do we translate that to healthcare? The things that we had on the screen are beginning to do those things. Right? If you knew you had access to this app like Kaya Health, if you had that at any time and then could hit a button and either a PT would jump on the screen with you, or if we feel like the app and the PT I'm talking to thinks that this is worth them coming to my house, and I'm saying, yeah, I want this. This is what I want. I want you to come out to my house. Then I feel like I come out ahead and I'm paying a monthly fee. And now we can math that math. Now the economic data where it says not applicable, pricing data not available, we do this enough, we'll have data. So remember, it wasn't cassettes and CDs and Blu-ray to Spotify. There was a thing in the middle. There's always that messy middle before we come to the best solution. Not even saying that we're done doing $10 a month, but I don't know. I can't imagine a better solution than what we have here. I think we're sort of done, like in terms of subscription models are the way to do it. How do we yes and app and PTs to a subscription model? We're in the middle. We're not there yet, but we're on our way.
You saying all of that made me realize. So let's just say I've got a Spotify account. I'm paying a monthly subscription. I'm never going to possibly listen to music 24/7. It's really a similar pricing strategy to Planet Fitness. So Planet
Right.
Fitness wants to sell memberships. They want that $10 a month recurring revenue. There's no way every human that signs up is going to be in the gym all the time. So like you said, it's like, okay, I can kind of understand the Planet Fitness model relative to an outpatient orthopedic PT clinic. And then I can kind of understand the Spotify model to a Planet Fitness model. We're getting closer. One of the things that keeps coming back to me for the therapist that doesn't want to go virtual, because I know a lot of them are resistant to it. A lot of them don't want to do that. I think back to early 2000s when I first got into physical therapy, and I was a business owner and I was looking at this. And back then I remember thinking to myself, okay, so if I'm going to get paid the most per interaction for an evaluation, and then reimbursements then going to decline for follow-up care, how can I do this so that I leverage and optimize the evaluations, but then is there something better I can do for follow-up care? Is there something that is good enough, right? Listening on the radio was good enough for most people. And then some of the people wanted, like, I want on demand. So I'm going to pay the dollar to buy the song to get it. And then, of course, at the fringe, you've got people who will pay $1 million to have Taylor Swift come and sing at their child's birthday party.
Right.
But I think when I look at old models and I'm like, well, if I optimize the therapist time for evaluations, and I know evaluations are an untimed code, and I know that I'm treating an outpatient orthopedic, relatively high functioning population. They're driving themselves, bathing themselves, dressing and grooming and sleeping. And they're just dealing with these nuisance conditions that have been developing over time. Why do I not see more therapists, more business owners say, I'm going to reserve the therapist time for what the therapist does best: the evaluation, the assessment, synthesizing the information, looking for those red flags, looking for the hidden cause, the root cause of the problem. And then the therapist is going to create the treatment plan that doesn't have to be delivered by the therapist every time.
Right.
And for $100 a month, unlimited therapy, the client can come in 5 days a week. They probably won't, but they can. That's kind of the model that we've always run. I continue to pay PTs and PTAs to deliver that model, even though it doesn't need a PT or a PTA. And so I bring the cost of care down. I can maintain the live element, in-person element. It doesn't have to be a virtual program. I can optimize the clinician's time for the highest value service we can deliver to a third-party payer. If the individual wants to pay out of pocket because they do want the therapist, they want that next level up kind of service, they can pay for it. I just don't see that happening at scale right now.
All right, so let's review. I want to make sure I understand, the audience understand. You're saying, and I agree with you, I think, the PT's biggest bang for their buck, and not minute because it's not a times code, is the evaluation, right?
Yeah.
A PTA or a tech can't do an evaluation, right, legally, or
Right.
bill for it. So you're saying, well, if the PTs can do that, let's fill them up with evals. You're an evaluation machine, right? And then based on that evaluation, that diagnosis, that plan of care is then created by the PT, and then not handed off, but explained to their team member, their partner, their PTA with the patient. Okay, from here you do this. And you're saying, I understand what we can deliver, that if the person values coming in 5 days a week, that's not economically feasible. The insurance company is going to pay for it. And if I'm going to charge you for that PT's one-on-one time, the cost is too much. So at a lower rate, at a subscription model like Apple Music, you can pay $500 a month, come in as many times as you want, knowing that there's a bell curve. Some people are going to just absolutely abuse it, right? They're going to come in 10 times a month, twice a day. Some people are never going to come in, and most of the people are going to fall in the middle of that bell curve, and they're going to come in 2 to 3 times a week. I'm making these numbers up. But
Yeah.
is the PT still in the clinic when they're coming for their third follow-up with the PTA? And could they bend their ear for a minute or just get a quick aside with them?
I would take it another step and I would say the PT, and at least I'm using my biases in this example. Like my passion is not to count 10 reps, right? And I know most of the people
Right.
watching this, they're the same way. Like they want to analyze and they want to critique and they want to improve. But the idea is if I'm going to deliver a good enough product that's going to get improvement and all of those things, me as the PT, I do the evaluation. I love being an evaluation machine. I'm sorry, but I do. I can generate $1,000 an hour being an evaluation machine. And I feel like it gives me the most reward for the time and the knowledge and the experience that I've cultivated over my life. But that being said, potentially you're looking at levels of membership, $100 a month. There doesn't have to be a PT on site. It's not billable through insurance. There's an individual in the clinic that I've trained, that I've educated to carry out my recommended protocol for a person that doesn't need direct supervision.
Right.
This is that classic individual that just needs to do the reps. They need to work out. They're not going to see gains in 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. They just need to keep working at it. So I can hire somebody that's not licensed, that is not delivering quote skilled care, and it's not billable to insurance, but they're an amazing person. They're great at telling jokes and socializing and connecting with the consumer. Then at the next level, maybe it is a PT or a PTA who's delivering the services. But at the highest level, yeah, the PT is the project manager. The project
Right.
is the plan of care. I'm going to utilize the resources that I've pulled together to find that sweet spot of value. The sweet spot of value is the price is 1/10 of what it's worth. It's worth $1,000. I'm going to charge $100. Can I do that at scale? And can I do that profitably? And can I deliver an experience that exceeds the client's expectation? I think all of those boxes can be checked right now. I think we all have the capacity to do it. And at the end of the day, it makes the therapist's time more profitable, which
Right.
means they don't have to see as many patients. They don't have to work as hard. You know, historically, we would use that model, not us, but therapists would use that model. They bill for techs to deliver therapy inappropriately, and they would do it and burn the heck out of their therapist. Their therapist would be seeing 60, 70 visits a week. I think we reinvent the model. We innovate on what we know is effective, but we make it better. That's the
Yeah.
easiest way for me to say it.
Well, then how do we learn? I mean, I've been taking my dad to a lot of doctor's appointments, and if you look at the doctor, similarly to a doctor of physical therapy,
Sure.
do you think my dad's doctor, who's a fantastic woman, by the way, great manner, great personality, great clinically, my dad loves her, and he doesn't love a lot of people, but he loves her, right? So, do you think she's giving him any injections? Do you
Right.
think she's checking blood pressure? Do I think she could give injections or give blood pressure or hand my dad medication? Absolutely. Does she? No. She's there maximizing her time. When she's in front of my dad, the only thing she has to work or think about is what I'm hearing since last time, what you're telling me is going well, needs to be fixed. And then she's a project manager. And I think that's a way for her to be most efficient. She understands her role on the team. She's the team captain, right? According to me and my dad, anyway. And then she has a well-trained team around her that's able to deliver that.
So let's run some very simple math.
Okay.
And you guys will see me, but I'm going to pull up a calculator because I can't do public math. Here in Ohio, typical Medicare covered initial evaluation, low complexity, reimburses about $96, $98. Let's just say $100.
Okay. I'll do the math for you. $100. Go.
Okay. 20-minute commitment. I could do 3 an hour easily. Remember, this is low complexity. Look at the requirements for a low complexity evaluation. This is your typical Medicare beneficiary who's golfing on the weekends. They're socializing. They're going to church. They're doing everything. They just have a little shoulder pain. They have a kink in their neck. They have a hitch. What is it? A hitch in their giddy up. Something like that.
Yep.
And they're like, hey, I want to get this taken care of before it gets worse. This is not the most complex neuro case that has cardiac complications and falling twice a week. This is a very simple case to treat. I could do 3 an hour. That's $300 an hour. I could do 10 hours committed to that a week. That's $3,000 a week. 50 weeks a year. That's $150,000 just doing that. Now, from there, that's 10 hours of my time a week. That leaves me 30 hours if I was willing to work a 40-hour week. That's a whole lot of extra time to do anything that I want to do, anything that I enjoy, like have, experiences that maybe I wouldn't otherwise have. And of course, if we double it and we take it to 300,000 because I'm working 20 hours a week, that extra 150,000, I can build a pretty good team to deliver the protocols that don't need a lot of complexity and medical supervision. I can hire great people for an extra 150,000 in revenue that can deliver better patient care. And that's not counting the $100 a month that would be paid by the consumer if they wanted to do a month of this kind of, post-evaluation protocol.
Right. Now, hold on a second. The people on the other side might say, but I like spending an hour one-on-one care with my patient.
Yeah.
I like doing that. You
Yeah.
said, listen, I have no problem being an eval machine. I think there are people who agree with you, but some people say our profession is built on the fact that we get the most time, we build this relationship. What would you say to that?
I would say, you know what? I like eating chocolate cake too. I like going on vacation. I love fishing. Like those are awesome things. Like you love the hour with your patient. You love building the connection rapport. You love all of those things. Awesome. Those are selfish desires that we should fulfill and we should honor and we should recognize. But as soon as you start with I love, we stop right there. Like that is what you want. That is the fulfillment you are seeking. And back to one more time, if I'm generating 150,000 in 10 hours a week of work, you can do all the stuff you love in the other 30 hours. Like that's my whole point here is everybody wants to take it to the extreme. The extreme is, oh, well, how are you going to do that 40 hours a week? You're not. You're going to generate the money you need to survive. You're going to generate the revenue you need to live in a fraction of the time. And then you can do whatever you want with the time. Something that I don't ever talk about, but I think needs to be recognized is in my clinic, in my operation. I have never in 22, 23 years told somebody your insurance is exhausted. You cannot come to therapy unless you pay the full cash rate. I've never had to turn somebody away. I've never had to refuse care. I've never had to send somebody to collections. Finances have never been a limiting factor for somebody who wants to come to therapy at my clinic. But the only reason I can do that is because I have the profitability from other things to make that happen. And when I say other things, I'm not even talking about outside of patient care. I'm saying I can operate a profitable clinic in a conventional model, and that profitability allows me to do all the other things that I wouldn't be able to do. If I'm struggling to survive, I can't help other people. I need to have that abundance to help other people.
Mm-hmm. I was going to use this as my parting shot. Maybe I'll hold it for my parting shot.
Yeah, hold it.
But I would love to hear what people think about this, right? So we started talking about apps and the review of this third-party agency in terms of like these, replacing PT augmented, and like, remote therapeutic monitoring sort of a PT's eyes and really that's remote therapeutic monitoring. Really, that's just accountability. If you're paying for this, we have to be able to make sure you're doing it, and you have to prove it. It's the digital way of being able to prove it. From the insurance standpoint, I sort of agree with them. If you're charging me something, I want to make sure they're actually doing it, because I don't want to be paying for this 6 months from now. I want to be done in 3 months. Yeah, that's all I had on that. APTA, of course, jumps all over this when they see the report and they issue a press release saying, absolutely, this is fantastic, showing the value of physical therapists and technology. I haven't seen anything public from, my friend Drew Contreras, whose job at the APTA is sort of innovation and technology. But my assumption is he's super excited and intimately aware of all these different apps that were mentioned in the report. So I know APTA is excited about it, as they should be. If you're nervous about it, you're playing like Metallica, and I'm going to tell you to stop doing that, right? Metallica changed their tune fast enough to not get washed away by technology. Or they just, I mean, or they just realized go along or get along, or you're going to get run over by technology. You can, the line that kept coming up to me was you can't legislate against technology. You can try, but it's going to find its way. And that was why in 2008, I looked at the world and said, I'm a radio DJ in Northeast Pennsylvania. I don't know what that's going to look like 5 years from now. And I'm not in the position to change my life. I was just, whatever the radio company was going to tell me to do, I was going to do. That's why I got out. People are like, why'd you leave radio? It looked like such a disruptor. And a lot of my friends don't have jobs anymore. Like when I started at radio stations, there were, let's say 100 employees. By the time I left 10, 15 years later, there were 30 employees. I mean, that's like 70% attrition or 70%, less people being involved, because when I left, I never said this before, my last day as a radio program director, they made me fire my morning guy. That was my last day. Like, hey, by the way, bring that guy in you've been working with for 8 years and fire him. And here's why. Not because we're bringing in a new morning team that's going to sit in Northeast Pennsylvania. We're going to bring in a show from Dallas that we're now just going to plug in. And this show is now going to be simulcast on 49 stations and not 48 or 40, they just added one more syndicated market. And that sort of cemented my decision. Like, I don't know which way the wind's going to blow, but I'm not in a position to be able to ride this wave. So I'm out. I'm out on media. Now, there was some weird, murky stuff in the middle, but now we arrive at, I have a talk show in my living room right now, and I'm talking to Tony, and we don't need anybody's permission, right? The barrier is zero, except the difficulty of getting noticed is now infinitely harder because anybody can do a live stream. So you get give and take, whether it was designed or not. Yeah. So understand that the people that are going to come out on top in this situation are going to be the people that figure out how to give, not build a wall, but build a bridge with this technology, because you're not going to be able to legislate against it. You're just not.
Which, for the record, there's 53 viewers that are on the live stream across multiple platforms. I mean, that's just amazing.
That's wild, right?
Aaron, Bo, I saw Will Boyd on here. Guys, thank you so much for coming. You know, the saying that everybody's using, and I say it too, it's not that AI is going to take away your job. It's people using AI are going to take away your job.
Yep.
Even within my little clinic, I mean, we're using AI. There's AI scribes now. Today, I'm doing a webinar. We're talking to HippoScribe and HelloNote, and we're talking about what I'm doing today using AI scribe technology to optimize my workflow. You know, stuff that I couldn't do before because I didn't have enough minutes in the day, I can do now. I can use AI to listen to my patient interaction and generate an email report. Never would have done that before. The email will summarize like the accomplishments of my patient for that particular treatment day. And what's interesting is I could tell the AI, hey, I want you to, start the email with a motivational, quote, and I want you to end with this. And it opens new doors that I didn't think were possible, because now if I've got an auto-generated email that is unique to the patient care experience for that day, I can also embed affiliate links for equipment that we might have used that day that gives that patient the opportunity to buy the shoulder pulleys that I mentioned, which obviously pays me back a commission on that transaction. It gives me opportunities to build an email list. A decade ago, if you mentioned a newsletter, I would have laughed at you, thinking who in the world is going to read a newsletter? Meanwhile, we see newsletters that are being sold for 7- and 8-figure exits. Everything has functionality as long as you apply it correctly. And so I still say it, I think this is the most exciting time in the PT profession for those PTs who are willing to look at the technology that's out there, the tools we have available, and really put them to the test. We don't know how it's going to affect us. I've been using this AI scribe for over a month. I still change the way I use it almost every single day because I haven't quite figured out exactly the perfect way that it fits into my business model.
We're still in the, I guess I'll pay 99 cents per song. And then I think Steve Jobs went up to like $1.50 or $2 a song. We're still in this weird sort of place where we're figuring it out. Right. But it's going to find its level, and you have first mover advantage now. And they say it, again, I'll save it for my parting shot because I got a good one. But yeah, I mean, legislate all you want, or run around telling people it's not as good as me, and yelling the sky is falling. That's not going to play out well. That's what Metallica did.
Will Boyd, I interviewed him a couple weeks ago, and he and Alex are doing some really cool stuff in finance. Like, I have no idea the role AI plays in finance, but I have to imagine between, projections and SWOT analysis and predictive analysis, all this stuff, there has to be stuff going on in there that's so interesting to me. I probably need to get Will back on the podcast so we can talk about some of those things, because I'm sure he is leveraging that technology in ways that I don't even know it's available.
I would imagine taxes.
Yeah.
Predicting what you can do and saying, hey, listen, if you do this, based on the code that you've given me and what I know about your business, you could save money by doing this. Or, hey, did you know that? Yeah. I mean, it's able to think for you of what's coming down the road in ways that maybe you're not skilled, don't have the bandwidth, or don't like. So again, AI won't replace you, but a person using AI will sure run you over like a truck. And that's my opinion.
And for the record, people that are still here, for 50 minutes in, this morning before I got on the podcast with you, I had somebody reach out to me last night. They said, hey, I'm desperately seeking a physical therapist to give me a quote on these questions from a journalist. Jimmy, I know you know what HARO is. Yeah. Help a reporter out. The individual who reached out to me, I had worked with him on a digital marketing campaign when I was boosting the ranking for Choose PT First. And I hadn't talked to him for about a year. His original company got disrupted by AI. Tons of writers went out of business, all this kind of stuff. But I found it interesting that, 2 years later, he's reaching out to me because reporters are still looking for original sources. They're still looking for direct quotes. They're still looking for professionals. And it was great. And what did I do? I wrote original content that I then had ChatGPT review and revise, that I then brought back my original voice. So it was like a 3-step iteration to create the final product, but it is my content, my ideas, my structure, my name. And now that reporter is going to publish it in GQ.com. Like, this is not, a little publication. Obviously, that reporter could have used his own AI to write this, but they still need that human connection. Yeah. So again, we are not going anywhere, but if we don't have the tools and the resources, I couldn't have created that content in 15 or 20 minutes and have it come out as well or as good as it did if I didn't use those tools.
Yeah. All right. We're almost at the top, almost at the hour. So what's your parting shot here, Tony?
I think we as therapists know better than anyone else. There are tools that serve a purpose. I use a cane when I need a cane. I use a walker when I need a walker. I'm going to use computers and technology when I want to improve my level of communication.
I would say that the biggest gains, this is someone else's quote that's going to come out of my mouth kind of sideways, not word for word, but the biggest gains that we've seen in history have always happened when people double down in times of flux. When there's the biggest change, when there's the biggest risk, by leaning in and actually not playing it safe is when we see people really get the biggest gains. It is counterintuitive, right? We have fight, flight, freeze, or there's another F in there somewhere. But we have fight or flight. And right now, the answer is probably freeze. I don't know what's going on, so I'm just going to hold on to what I'm doing. I don't want to do a lot. You don't need to go all in, though. What I'm telling you, if you want to invest, it doesn't mean pushing all your chips to the middle of the table. You can invest in something like playing around with something like HippoScribe or ChatGPT for $20 a month or $0 a month.
Yeah.
So the biggest gains we've seen in history have always been because someone leaned in and invested in a time of change and uncertainty. I'm telling you to do that now in some way, shape, or form. And an investment could just be your time in trying to understand it, listening to shows like this, or reading articles on the topic. So that's what I would say to people is, in the biggest times of change and flux, double down.
Awesome, buddy. We are back, guys. 8:30 Thursday. We'll see you then. Thanks, Jimmy.